A person in a couple of days could make a feature film.
And then have like Charlie, you be some AI character for just, a few seconds.
How many steps did you take to make it overall?
My love, why dost thou seem so cross today?
Thy words dost cause me pain and plight.
To make a AI generated video out of this, you're going to use our voices, but it's going to generate the characters and the settings.
Yes, it's going to generate the characters and the settings, but I plan to use our voices to, kind of overlay it, maybe side by side. And
famous Picasso quote, which said, computers are useless, they only give you answers. Metaverse is it's a good way of talking about where are we going with all of this.
I take one of the things that I love about digital worlds is being not myself, right?
So we're going to have a conversation about how you made it, and that's going to be the content of the video that the AI is going to make.
That's right. And then what we're probably going to do is take, this conversation we have and then have like Charlie, you be some AI character for just, a few seconds and then maybe flip to another AI character. This is actually my first time doing this, so I guess we'll find out live.
I'm game. I'm totally intrigued.
We'll see how it looks.
So good way to start out. I saw the video that you posted. It sounded like it was a Shakespeare scene being avataared by remote actors, just operating avatars. So I was shocked when you described the process of constructing the scene in 2 hours using different AI programs. So I know you posted it, but for the sake of this conversation, can you just explain it, sort of walk through it, the 3 steps you took?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. So basically, and it actually took probably a little less than 2 hours. So it was, a lot of it was just setup work. So
you could imagine, a person in a couple of days could make a feature film.
Yeah, well, there are definitely limitations. There are definitely limitations to technology. So we're actually looking at how far we can take it. And actually, that's kind of the next step that, I'm looking into is how could you make, more of the scene, right? Because you see that it's a 2-shot, or it's not a 2-shot. It's, the 1 shot of each person, but you go kind of back and forth. It's a dialogue.
Right, it's 2D media.
That's right. That's right. So, we can't get like, close up of the hands and stuff like that. But the way effectively is, the way to describe it is we created, so, and I guess I could say the word I, since it was just a few minutes for me on my phone most of the time. So went to ChatGPT, which I've been playing around with.
But you joined it. You're a member of ChatGPT.
Yeah. And I think a lot of developers are, a lot of people, developers and people who are creating stories are definitely, playing around with it. I mean, it's a free tool, right? So anyone in the world can join. They have to just, complete a questionnaire and say they're a developer, which, as long as you are, then, they'll give you access. So I went in and just put in some, I put in some prompts.
So you have access to ChatGPT in a way that I don't, paying them $20 a month.
No, I don't pay any money. No, I pay $0 a month.
So I'm saying you get a different version of it than I get as a member of the public.
No, I'm just a member of the member of the public. The reason I bring up the developer thing is when you sign up, it doesn't give you access unless you click the box, oh, I'm using it for development purposes or something.
Oh, I see. I see.
So I know I have all the things that all the tools that were used to make that video, all of those are available for free to the entire world today, right? So anybody around the world with an internet connection, whether you're in America or you're in, Zambia or you're in Thailand, you can do that for free, right? As long as you have an internet connection. So, so basically went to ChatGPT, put in a few prompts to generate a script, right? Obviously the prompts themselves become very important because one of the things I asked for was, I tried different versions of a scene of, a man and a woman breaking up, right? Mm-hmm. And, having putting it in Iambic Pentameter, it generated what I think is not great Iambic Pentameter in terms of, the actual words, but it was pretty cool to see the, to see an output.
I was completely fooled. I thought it was a scene from some Shakespeare play.
No, it's entirely the entire thing. Other than the editing.
Obviously that was the reference that the AI got.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. There are other people in the world who created Iambic Pentameter stuff, but Shakespeare is obviously the most well-known around the world. So effectively what did was create that script, then generated art through, something called MidJourney, which just, you put in prompts to generate art, and it didn't quite generate. I mean, for me, I just put in, I wanted the orc, right, sitting in an American diner, which I think I got. I wanted a Tolkien-esque orc. And then I also wanted a Tolkien-esque elf sitting in the diner. And it didn't really give me the elf. I mean, I guess maybe you can kind of see it in her ears, but it's basically an elf and an orc. But I don't think the elf part really conveys itself.
No, I got that it was kind of a role-playing game scene, if you will. I mean, here's the thing about this, and I said it the minute I saw ChatGPT. All of a sudden, asking questions is an art form. It's funny. You remember there's a famous Picasso quote, which said, computers are useless. They only give you answers. But now, the most important thing about the computer becomes the question.
Right.
And so there is an art to that, right? Because you were making all those, free associations and making a creative request. So there definitely was an art to how you constructed the scene.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know how much credit I can take, given that, AI, I feel like did almost everything, but that is actually now the really.
Well, no, you told it what to do. I mean, you made assumptions and hoped that it would start to construct your scene. But look, I mean, you're an artist, so you would have repeated it if you thought it was promising.
Yeah.
To get the result that you wanted. I mean, crazy that you got it at the first swing and didn't have to revise the question a few times to get the result you wanted. That part is amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And a lot of these tools I used for the very first time. So, I'd heard about the tools, and of course, AI is something that's been on our radar for years now. But I think it's really become just very apparent how useful it is. And in many ways, it's like, I've been lucky to direct, films in XR and VR specifically. And what we did here is not too unlike, what it's like working with a production team in some ways. Now there's a lot of things but it's like, working with the art department, which is an AI, working with, story, which is, an AI. Now, working with humans is, of course, vastly more rewarding, but the actual process of the work wasn't too different, which I found interesting, right, in its own way. So,
it lacked nuance.
Oh, totally.
Right. It lacked, if it went through the hands of an animator, obviously there'd be lots of nuance. And as you said, as a director, of course, you have to hate the fact that in VR, you're not in control of time. Right. There's no cuts. There's no close-ups. There's no panning shots. All of that is in the hands of the viewer. So, it sort of feels like with this, you're making a 2D scene and, kind of not having to go through the pain of being a live action director. But again, the nuance I wonder if it could be, if it was, not Shakespeare, if it was a little less stilted, a little more delivered by a real actor, because it didn't quite have that, it was still slightly replicant, we should do a Turing test on this guy.
Yeah, I don't think these AI tools, at least from what I can see, are going to be replacing, I don't think anyone's going to be, fearing, running for their jobs in any real way. And when it comes to creative, but what I think it shows is a glimmer that, these things are advancing so quickly that, soon it's going to be able to do a lot. I think right now, a very strong use case is just in pre-production, right? So let's say you're a solo writer or solo director trying to understand how your scene could look, right? And, you don't have a lot of time or money to pay for a lot of actors.
Storyboards are expensive, as you know, and there's an art to making them too.
At Pixar, they're just some most incredible storyboard artists I've ever seen.
This process where a character is molded by a lot of different hands, and that's what makes the performance so rich. The actor contributes, the animator contributes, the director contributes, the screenwriter contributes. So the actor, as presented on in the video at that point, has really been crafted and recrafted, and sort of an endless cascading game of, can you top this?
Exactly.
Yeah, we used to call that at Disney the Mallet Squad, where you had to perform the storyboard for all of your colleagues. So, other artists, as well as executives, maybe a director or a producer. So, there was a lot of pressure, to both to top it, but also to do something that can't be topped, where that leaves everybody with their mouths hanging open.
Very much agreed.
But when your colleagues come up with better ideas, just sitting there in front of everybody, that's where the Mallet Squad comes in.
Yeah, definitely. And like in the creation of all of our work to date, it's been about that, right? You kind of have this unbounded time where you sit in a room, you crack open a soda, maybe a beer, and just hang around for a long time, just discussing and thinking about how to make the story better. And I think that, is an invaluable way to create, that's been true for a long time.
But for things like news,
yeah,
it could be very effective, especially because, you want something that is timely. So I think, journalists are going to become fact gatherers for AI.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So a New York Times reporter job is to collect the original information, and the AI does everything else. So that's going to screw up my profession pretty good. So those were 2 steps that you took. How many steps did you take to make it overall?
My love, why dost thou seem so cross today?
Thy words dost cause me pain and plight. I've thought on this a while, and must convey our loves at end. 'Tis time to say good night.
What say thou? Dost thou wish to part with me?
Indeed, good sir, I do. My heart is free. I need a love that's real, not just pretense, a love that grows and thrives with joy immense.
But I dost love thee, heart and soul so true. What more dost thou require of me to do?
Thy love dost mean the world, but 'tis not fair for thee to take for granted all I bear. I want a love that's strong, where I can thrive and grow and bloom to reach my highest drive.
Then I shall change, and all thy dreams come true. I'll show thee love like none, and make it new.
Thy words dost sound so sweet, so kind, but actions speak so loud the change must find.
Then I'll depart.
So script made through ChatGPT, made the art through MidJourney, dialogue through 11 Labs, animated it through DID.
So I'm sorry, DID?
DID is an app that if you put in a script or an audio, it'll animate a picture.
So it'll take a character. So you fed the orc character into it and it animated it.
That's right, with the audio from the speech to text from 11 Labs. So
it let you input all those things, and then it came out with the animated video.
That's exactly right.
Wow, that is crazy. What voices did it use? I mean, did it just synthesize the voices?
Well, so DID has its own synthesized voices. So I made a previous video, which you might be able to see. I posted it earlier in the day. And then after that, I decided to use 11 Labs, which I learned about later in the day through a Zoom call, right? So I'd made this video already, the one before the one you saw. And the audio was much more stilted and much more replicant-y, right? So I ended up using 11 Labs, which I just learned about, and it was much better audio. And there are actually people out there on Twitter who have done a much better job of actually taking a script and having it come alive. It's not going to replicate, great actor, but what's kind of great is it's actually probably better than a bad actor, for example, right?
Well, couldn't you have a great actor record it and just make that one of the things that you upload?
That's exactly right. So you could do that as well. Then you're not going to get the performance from the actor, but you will get the voice performance.
You mean you can't create animation to go with the voice?
Exactly.
Can you instruct the AI to do that?
I'm sure you could try.
Right. Well, it's very immature technology, right? So, but now don't you think that like a Disney could go in there and say, well, let's take AI, let's make a license from ChatGPT and figure out how to do that?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. What's amazing about this convo is it feels like some of our earliest convos, Charlie, in that we're kind of looking at this new tech, and I think everyone's trying to figure out what can we do with it, right?
Yep. Well, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be something amazing, but I'm just trying to process it myself. And because of my age, it takes me a while to process these things. Sort of like crypto. I just never quite, Web3, I think I finally get what that is, but it took me a really long time to kind of fully absorb what people were talking about. And of course I had it, my first reaction is always a natural aversion, although I don't have that feeling about AI. I think partly because, that was my primary field of expertise. Whereas AI is not, I'm just a student.
I mean, I'm certainly no expert in AI, but what is interesting when you look into it, there are a lot of things that it can't do, right? So for example, in the generation of images, you have all this training data that it's using to generate an image of, an elf in a diner. But you can't, for example, it's hard to do things out of the training data, right? So if you don't have that, the outputs are only as good as the data that's fed into it, and then the model that you create to sort of generate these new outputs. So I think like if a Disney or just really any studio or even just us goes in and says like, okay, let's try to make a feature film with this, right? Like I can whip together a scene in minutes that is what you saw, right? Literally minutes, right? It was certainly like way less than 2 hours. But going beyond that, even just like getting a close up of the hand on the table, like that becomes difficult, right?
Couldn't you, just backing up, couldn't you as a director say, hey, AI, take that scene and give me a close-up of the hands and give me a close-up of their face and give me an over-the-shoulder shot and give me a establishing shot? Doesn't it know what those things are?
No, it doesn't. That's the crazy thing. It doesn't.
I told it to write a story about VR in the style of Charlie Fink. And it actually made a game try, but it was completely free of facts. So nonetheless, VR will someday be important. It just filled the whole thing up with generalities. I thought, wow, well, you'd have to be a pretty dumb professor to think this was written by a person. Although I have seen some things and I thought, oh, it feels like it was written by an AI, and it wasn't. So
I think there are certain business schools, and actually, being gone to business school, where some of these essays are being written by ChatGPT and actually passing exams, at least.
Right.
I hear that. And it's, it makes me question my choices.
Also, as a college professor, you don't read them that carefully. If there's a lot of them, I'm looking for a few things and a few ideas. I don't actually assign papers anymore. They do plenty of writing on the quizzes and the tests. And the paper would be torturing them and torturing me.
A dual torture. Who's more tortured in that scenario?
Exactly. Well, the truth is that's not the way people communicate today. They communicate with images and videos and, so that's the skill that they need to hone much more than narrative writing, which, as we just discussed, is, likely to be, changed, if not completely transformed. This is potentially an internet size disruption.
I think so. And, I think the time scale is the question.
Well, clearly there have to be ways for individual users to upload content, right? There has to be a way of you taking that scene or a not completely other scene. And let's take a live action scene and you only shot the establishing shot. There should be a way to put the characters in there and put the establishing shot in there and even the drawings of the set and have it construct a more high fidelity version and one that gives you back the control of time.
We're looking into that. It's certainly not possible today for a variety of reasons, but right. There should be a way. I think you're right.
Well, it would be the next step of usefulness, because right now the usefulness is very general and people sort of are just discovering, as you are, well, what does that mean? So I think you've got a long way on a lot of new technology. Sounds like sort of just as by accident. You had no idea how it was going to turn out.
I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I mean, I had a clue that, that it was going to be interesting, right? Like, I mean, I kind of knew it would be interesting.
So interesting.
I was kind of running between stuff, and I just started on my phone even. Like, I wasn't even at a computer when I started making that scene, right? So a lot of that scene was just me on ChatGPT on my iPhone, and a lot of the steps were actually just done on my iPhone, and I kind of finished it up on the computer, but that wasn't almost not even necessary, right? A lot of these tools are just available for anybody.
To make a AI generated video out of this, you're going to use our voices, but it's going to generate the characters and the settings.
That's right. Yeah. Yes, it's going to generate the characters and the settings, but I plan to use our voices to, kind of overlay it maybe side by side and just see what see what it's like.
It would be, unfortunately, I don't think you're going to be able to do it, but it's sort of like, ooh, could I match the character, the design of the character to the voice?
Yeah, I think that might be tough, but I mean, is there a character that you would like to, is there a character you would like to be? I'm curious if that's so, then I can try to design one for you. And,
well, I mean, some kind of nutty professor character probably would be.
Okay. All right. I'll do an input of Nutty Professor and
or Nutty Professor wearing a VR headset.
Nutty Professor wearing a VR headset. Okay.
And a tweed suit.
And a tweed. Hold on a second. Okay, this is quite a lot. So
and a tweed suit with a bow tie.
Okay. So you want to be a Nutty Professor in a tweed suit wearing a bow tie.
Right.
And anything else with wearing a VR?
Well, bald with a gray goatee.
Bald with a gray goatee. Okay.
Between 50 and 60 years old.
Between 50 to 60 years old. Any art styles you want? Like you can pick any artist, like Picasso to Rembrandt to a modern artist, for example.
Grant Wood. I don't know why a 1930s thing came to me, but
hey,
there you are.
Emerson said the first instinct's always best, right?
It's sort of, what it comes from, because, I take my students into all these different social VR experiences and we go as a group. Everybody creates their own avatar. One student said to me, "Professor, you create the same avatar in every virtual world."
And that is this one that you described.
Because the first thing everybody creates is something that looks like them. And then as they become more, they want the idealized version of them. So thin Charlie, not fat Charlie.
Huh. Interestingly, I take one of the things that I love about digital worlds is being not myself, right? So
you're a very sophisticated user. I'm saying the first thing that everybody does. Oh, let's see. I like the one on any of those kind of works. Although, any of those.
Any of those. Okay.
I like the one on the lower right. That'll work.
Lower right. Okay. So what I can do is I can make variations now of the one on the lower right. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
The one on the lower left is good. Also, that one's a little older looking, I think.
So do you want to do lower left, lower right? And then I can also ask.
No, I like the one on the lower right because you got the VR headset, but also the glasses and you can see the eyes.
Got it. Is there any changes you'd like me to ask for in the variations of it? Any things that are different? Like
no, it's fine. It's fine. There could be more definition around the VR headset so we can tell what it is.
Okay. Maybe with a Meta Quest Pro VR headset.
Yeah.
All right, let's try that. I don't know if it can do a Meta Quest Pro, but I'll ask because that looks more like a.
Maybe it'll just give you a different kind of VR headset. The one above it looks like it's using the Magic Leap one.
It does, yeah, it does. And then you've got it's kind of interesting what they.
I don't know what the one in the upper left is. That one doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, maybe Apple will put out a headset like that, right? I'm joking.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but there we go.
I think that Apple is putting out some kind of a pass-through, not a see-through.
Yeah, well, the MetaQuest Pro. Going to XR now rather than AI. The MetaQuest Pro. What I kind of love about, what I love about it is I was traveling in Europe. And I had a small little laptop and I was using the MetaQuest Pro as a screen. And I was like, this is actually a really useful, VR can be fun, but it's not really useful, right?
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think it actually is a lot more useful than it is succeeding as a game platform.
Huh, that's interesting.
I mean, it's people are doing exercises and using it for networking and social VR. I mean, those things are free, and they are the things that people are doing. I mean, when they announced that after 2 years they had sold $1.5 billion worth of software, and they were very, very, very excited and pleased with themselves. And then it turns out that Call of Duty goes on sale and makes that much money in 2 weekends. So it sort of puts in perspective, it's a niche game console like the Switch. I mean, that's where we are right now. I think the problem is people still prefer other screens to do most things. I mean, people are doing Supernatural, which I never would have predicted that. And I mean, I would find it terribly upsetting to be doing a lot of exercise while wearing a Quest.
That's been a killer use case during COVID for us, by the way.
Yeah.
So like my wife and I,
you guys do the Supernatural thing on the Quest?
No, we don't even do Supernatural. We do Beat Saber. So we did sign up for Supernatural. I think it's a cool app, and it's all power to Chris, Aaron, and their team. But like, I just like Beat Saber itself, just, prefer it. So it wasn't even a matter of the subscription, though that was kind of, a thing. It's like getting, having to pay the subscription price for Supernatural. But all the way back in quaint old 2020, we live in Park City, Utah. They shut down the ski slopes because of COVID. And my wife and I are like, well, how are we going to work out? Right. Do we got to get a Peloton or whatever? And it's like, I got to get this big bike. And I just picked up the VR headsets that we have lying around. And she just started using it so much that I had to get her own Quest 2 because we're sweating in this thing, right? Playing Beat Saber on Expert Plus or whatever, right? And she got really good. I mean, she went from nothing to being Expert Plus in Beat Saber.
And you got to work out at the same time.
So she could work out, right? During COVID. Yeah. So, I mean, they describe the metaverse in different ways. There's consumer metaverse, like gaming, et cetera. There's like the enterprise metaverse. There's the industrial metaverse, which is like, using it in oil rigs or whatever. But yeah, the consumer metaverse I've used all the time still. Like my wife is a musician, so she did, like a live show in VR actually just the other day, right? So it's kind of cool that that's possible and can be done. I think the social part is cool. I guess my point about the whole using it as a screen was I hadn't used it in the enterprise metaverse context much. I guess if I define enterprise metaverse as like using it, to like conduct meetings on Zoom or in VR, right?
I mean, with regard to meetings, it's more of a novelty. A lot of things you can't do in it, but you definitely feel present with the other people in a way that you don't on Zoom because you're having an actual experience, not a media experience.
Totally.
And it's worse than a media experience because it's a media experience on your PC where you've got a lot of other things going on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good perspective. It's good perspective. But it's interesting. I mean, did you see that movie? It was like a Sundance movie like a year ago. It was called We Met in Virtual Reality.
Yeah. It was Joe Hunting's movie.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know Joe, but I saw that and, I wish it had more of an impact. Like it seems like it's had an impact, but not as much.
It's got a couple of problems. One is it's kind of depressing, and the other is kind of. And this is the problem with VR. It's damned with faint praise. Oh, isn't this great? There's a VR movie, and it's really boring. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it's a slow-moving documentary. And the narrative method is sort of peeling back appearances, but when you peel back the experiences, the regular people are not that interesting.
That's interesting.
And some of them are kind of sorry ass people. That's always been one of the secrets of social VR is that the people who are there the most are people who have to be there.
Yeah.
Who don't have other alternatives for getting out. They don't like the way they look. They have a physical handicap.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought it was great that it got selected and it got attention. Nothing but good for VR.
Yeah.
But I don't know ultimately how many people are going to see that movie and say, I want to be in VR.
Yeah. Your commentary about, the Outcasts being the ones in social VR is, I think, accurate. But isn't that kind of how the internet started, right? Like in the 90s, right? Like the people in ICQ chat rooms were like,
100%.
and it's like, who would ever do this? And then like, of course, now everybody's, we're on the internet. Who's not on the internet now, right? So I really feel like it's that there. And, it's really unfortunate that that's true about, social. I think it's really unfortunate that that's true about social VR, right? Like, I feel like well-adjusted people could enjoy it just as much as anyone else.
Well, I went to plenty of industry events in alt space VR, and they really weren't bad. You talk to people who are proximate to you. You looked around not for somebody you recognize, but for a name that you recognize. It felt very much, you felt very present in a in a real social context, and much superior to Zoom that you couldn't have in Zoom. You couldn't have in any other media. Now, there are certainly places on VRChat that are good for that also. But all the alt space users are getting pushed to VRChat.
Yeah.
The VRChat hosting bill must be enormous.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And, VCs are just paying for it.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing is free is not free forever. Free is like free at the beginning. It's sort of like Uber, right? They underwrote the cost of Uber rides for 5 years, and they groomed us to the economy and the ease of ride sharing. And then, having killed all the cab companies and turned all the cab drivers into Uber drivers, they stopped subsidizing the rides, and the price went up 60%. And they had to pay the drivers real money. So, it went up another 30%. So now it's basically double the price of what it used to be. So it's like, we're going to revolutionize this industry, take out the middleman, and then raise the prices. And that's exactly what they've done, right? Because
you sound bitter, Charlie.
Well, I'm just saying this is what disruption is. Usually it doesn't result in any real savings for consumers. And usually something that is free or seems too good to be true is actually too good to be true. What is new is the venture strategy of underwriting the product to keep the cost artificially low. That's a strategy we used to see in the game console business or in the handset business, in the wireless business. Subsidize the handset because you're selling the bandwidth.
Yeah. Or the drug business, right?
Exactly. But in this case, they disrupted real businesses and real lives. And I think for a lot of people, it was very difficult.
Well, and they also made a lot of money on it too, right? I speak that as a former venture capitalist.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think it was a great deal for the venture capitalist and not such a great deal for somebody at the San Jose airport that needs to go 5 miles. Also, none of the convenience of just walking up to a cab and getting in.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe as somebody who's in San Francisco for a long time, now I'm in Park City, Utah, where it's a very different game. But in San Francisco, you couldn't get a cab
right.
Like you just couldn't get a cab, right? So like I used to live in New York and San Francisco. And the interesting thing about Uber is, there's a reason Uber, was built and grown in San Francisco, because if Uber didn't exist, like I would still not be able to get a cab in San Francisco.
Right.
Right.
So right. Because the cab service was so bad there. Yeah, I get it.
I really think it depends on geography. San Francisco is not the entire United States, obviously, but I
think you're making a good point. There were places that needed the additional service that they provide. So, and it isn't universally true. I think it's just true of cities mainly, and mostly medium-sized cities. So I'll tell you a story. Orlando Airport. I'm in a hotel downtown. I was speaking at a conference. I needed to get to the Orlando airport. And it was 5 p.m. and I could not get an Uber. And there was no alternative. The only other alternative was to get a black car or a limo for $400 an hour. So eventually I got a black car on Uber that was $200. I was like, okay, well, this is the only way to get 8 miles to the airport. So I ended up paying $200 to go 8 miles, and I had no other alternative.
Well, I mean, at least you had the opportunity to spend the two. Like, imagine you didn't have that service at all, right? And then you would. I mean, what would you do?
Well,
Like, walk or-
but we're talking
This
about
is like-
Orlando.
Yeah.
So Orlando should have a large cab ecosystem. People are going from hotels to Disneyland. It's got to have a big, taxi ecosystem, which it doesn't exist anymore. So all they've got is Uber. So anyway, well, setting that aside, I mean, they got really rich and they got rid of the cab businesses, and now they can charge whatever they want. That basically is the bottom line. So, and Uber is a public company. They need to squeeze every ounce of margin out of that business.
Yeah, there's a theory about that in we learned in business school. The idea that private companies can plan for the long run in a way that obviously public companies that need to make quarterly earnings can't. So
unless they're owned by an individual like Mark Zuckerberg who can't be voted out, and pretty much it's his toy.
Yeah, well, you could argue that his control of the company is allowing them to, for better or worse, plow the money into
absolutely. Listen, Mark,
into XR.
If it weren't for Mark Zuckerberg, buying Oculus, you and I would not be having this conversation today.
Yeah, I'd probably still be at Oculus actually, right? Because when I joined
Oculus, I promise you, Oculus would have been out of business.
I mean,
there's no way Oculus could have raised enough money. The Rift sucked; it didn't sell. They buried thousands of units. No, it would not have worked. They would have been out of business.
When I joined, I actually did the thing where I made a model because when I was a VC, the joke, which wasn't a joke because it was true, is that the average investment lasts longer than the average American marriage. So our average investment would last 8 years, right? So you're basically getting married to your, founder as a VC. And as a founder, you're getting married to your VC. Yeah. So the interesting thing is I created a model and I was like, Oculus is going to take like just as, trying to be conservative, it was like, it would probably take 10 years. I think you're absolutely right there. The CapEx costs would have been crushing. I mean, are crushing.
I mean, it's just hardware is really, really hard. And so to be a startup in hardware, your thing would have to take off so hard, and that's just not what happened.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely examples of that. I guess Nest, for example, interesting example of that, obviously still acquired by by Google.
But, kind of. Yeah. True. But I mean, if that doesn't happen, then people are not going to throw billions of dollars at you.
Yeah. I mean, that's why everyone passed on Oculus Series A, right? I mean, like we passed on the Series A. It was $15 million. Spark and Matrix took it. But, it was like, factories in Shenzhen, China, you have high capital expenditures and your marginal cost, to produce is not zero the way that it is with software, or virtually zero, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, it's
exactly. So,
tough business.
I mean, my point simply is Mark Zuckerberg decided this was going to happen.
Yeah, totally.
He decided that it didn't matter really that much how much it cost because of the scale of the opportunity.
Yeah.
Of course, ironically, he's lost control of the metaverse conversation.
That's, what do you think of that? I'm curious. I'd love to get your perspective on what's happened and who has control of the metaverse. Is it back to the people now, or?
No, it's a conversation. The metaverse is just a conversation about the future of the internet. But let me postulate a situation which could easily happen today. You are in VR inside of Rec Room. You are in quote unquote metaverse as envisioned by Mark Zuckerberg. And let's say I'm on a game console and you are playing on a smartphone. The three of us could still occupy a virtual space together. Am I not in the metaverse? Are you not in the metaverse? So again, I mean, and also remember the metaverse includes the digital twin of the physical world. So, I would argue you are on your smartphone just as much in the metaverse as the guy in the VR headset. The difference between the guy in the VR headset and you on your smartphone is that you are having a mediated 2D experience, whereas the person inside of VR has presence and a first person, actual experience versus a media experience. That's all. So those are very different experiences of the same thing, of the same conversation. But the place that we occupy together through those devices is unquestionably the metaverse. So the metaverse cannot be VR exclusively. And it may not be VR really, may be sort of nice to have, sort of be a good way to experience the metaverse, but it can't be the only way. And so, when Zuckerberg made that big movie I forget what it's called, when they changed the name from Facebook to Meta, that part was kind of left out. And, the kind of vision of people in VR being inside of the physical world was, very, very science fiction-y, but not wrong directionally. Right. So what's going to happen, right? We're going to start seeing 3D objects on Amazon instead of chiclets, with different photo views. You spin it around and make it close and make it far away. I think that'll be the beginning of the metaverse sort of invading the internet. I don't think it's possible for the metaverse to sort of change the internet as much as sort of get integrated in it. Oh, I want to experience this in 3D. But the use case for it is not really there yet, right? Because most things you do on the internet, you want them to be 2D. And by the way, you want them to be Web 2.0, because you know why? Google is really freaking useful. And it's free. It's $2.99 a month for the storage. I use Google Docs. I use Google Drive. It's epically. I use the email. I use the calendar. It is epically great. I'm not giving it up. I remember Web 1.0 when we had all these separate programs and devices, and I'm not going back. So when I hear about Web 3 projects, there are many things that Web 3 can do that are really useful. The tokenization of certain marketplaces is a no-brainer. But for many things, it makes no sense at all. So, and so, in a way, VR is kind of similar. For many things, VR is the only way to do it. But for many things, it makes no sense for it to be VR. So, and again, the interest of the public in VR is not great. And that is unexpected for me. I would think the Quest would be more popular, but what I'm seeing with my students is that, as I said, it is damned with faint praise. I love VR. This is awesome. How much VR did you do over the summer? Well, not that much, because I, was busy with other screens. So, damned with faint praise, as I said. It's not like a smartphone where you say, oh, I can't live without this. I think that it has the importance of a game console. Like I said, niche game console.
Yeah.
So I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what changes that. There's plenty of people doing it to maintain a software ecosystem. And it's not like they're selling zero of them. But I'm not sure they're getting more people to buy a headset than more headsets are going into drawers, right? Mm-hmm. One thing we don't know is the utilization of the headset sold.
Yeah. I think one thing that's heartening, though, to see, the numbers, I agree, and totally, somebody who's been in VR for, quite a while, I agree with you on all this. I think the punchline, I think the good news is the big companies, Meta and possibly Apple and others will be the ones spending lots of money and effort to get this continually in people's hands. But I think the interesting thing is I find that when you look at the Steam numbers, right, the concurrent users for the Rec Rooms and the VRChat, especially VRChats of the world. Rec Room has a much wider base across PS4 and et cetera. But a lot of VRChat users who are hardcore can only use it on PC VR through Steam, right, so they can get full body tracking and right, all of that stuff. Those numbers are not going down. They're staying steady, if not going up in a really steady way, right? And at the very least, you have sustained engagement.
Yeah, I think that there are people who are in VR who are using it. I just don't know how many there are, or if that is enough, right? And I'm just wondering why it's not growing more quickly. Because it has not followed the development pattern of, it's following the development pattern of the PC, and it's like 1992. And a lot of people still don't see why they would have a PC in their home, right? The PC has not yet met the internet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's actually a great analogy because it's doing better than like the mainframe or the mini computer, but it's not doing really better than the PC. Actually, the PC might be the best analogy. It's just this big, expensive thing that's thousands of dollars. That's really inconvenient to use, but it does allow you to do things that you can't do anywhere else.
I mean, again, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But again, I think there's a lot of the conversation has shifted back toward 3D virtual worlds that we're accessing through our 2D screens. And that's an argument that's made by Matthew Ball, who is a acolyte of TimSweeney, and who runs Epic Games, and and has Fortnite, which is still quite young. It's only from 2017. Yet, I mean, in a way, he is controls the largest metaverse.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm calling virtual worlds a metaverse metaverse is really whatever you want it to be. It's a made up word from science fiction, but it's a good way of talking about where are we going with all of this. I think the other really interesting thing is it's sort of a way, it's like a movement back towards synchronicity.
Yes.
Right. Because we've been enjoying an asynchronous life for the past 25 years, right? Starting with answering machines. We no longer had to be physically present with one another. And, and then the smartphone was introduced and it, put that on steroids. Right. So to the point that we don't really make phone calls anymore, or if we do, they're arranged, oftentimes by text.
like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this conversation.
Because 30 years ago it would have been, oh, well, I'll come over to the office.
Yeah.
Right. That would have been the only way to do it. And of course, because of that, we both would have a high incentive to be proximate to one another in a city like San Francisco or New York or LA, right? That was sort of the power of cities, would be that we could do that serendipitously, as we have done this Zoom call.
Yeah.
It's really fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
Great to see you again.
Good to see you.
I would love to hear more about what you guys are working on. Are you close to releasing anything?
As you know, we don't like to spoil surprises, but we got a lot.
Wasn't expecting you to. Yeah, that's why I asked, when am I going to see something?
Definitely soon. And I think you related to the beginning of our conversation. I think this AI stuff has given us a lot of ideas of how to, modify. I wouldn't say it's going to revolutionize just yet. That might be too strong.
No, it'll help you do things for sure. Give you ideas and help you, as you said, rehearse scenes and ideas. And I think it's great.
Yeah, do things faster, cheaper, and ultimately better.
I can't wait to see all the use cases that are going to emerge.
We plan to be at the forefront of figuring out some of those things, but certainly the world is a big place. So I'm sure we'll be surprised again and again by the developments of AI and how that's going to change everything.
But again, clearly you've illustrated its applicability to media businesses in a very dramatic way. So
yeah, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate it.
I can't wait to see what you turn up with this. Thanks for your time today.
Cheers.